Our Highline Voices, 106.5 KQWZ LPFM.
Connecting Highline and our region.
History, cultural heritage, art, performances, contemporary pop culture.
We collect, preserve, and tell the stories of the Highline region and its people.
We want to embrace our differences and similarities.
We want to extend our mission outside the walls of the museum. Our Highline Voices, 106.5 KQWZ LPFM.
Hi everyone, this is Nancy from the Highline Heritage Museum and welcome back. Today we have a very special guest. I'm excited to share her story, to get to know her a little bit more. For what I've seen, she's so cool. And so I'm really eager for you to learn more about her. What are we doing this project? Why not? Why not to connect with each other? Why not to learn about who is our neighbors or friends? Why not about just really finding ways to connect to each other? I think that we need that. We need that connection. We need to know that it's not just a title or a face organization, but it's a story behind it, and it just get to know the person. And so thank you again for the opportunity to do this with you and welcome you to this space. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so who are you?
It's funny that you asked that because I love the movie Alice in Wonderland, and I believe it was the caterpillar that asks Alice, "Who are you?" when he was sitting there. So it's kind of a saying that it always left an impression on me since I heard that, and it even at the young age when I watched Alice in Wonderland, it made me for the first time kind of think introspectively and ask myself that. And through the years, the way that I describe who I am has really changed. So if you would have asked me this question maybe 5 years ago, I would have really started off with everything that you would probably put on a job resume. Like, I am so-and-so, I live here, I do this for work. But since you're asking me today in 2025 who I am, today, this year, I call myself an artist. I am a woman. I am Latina. I am someone that wants to make the world more colorful. I am excited to be alive. I am scared to be alive. I am a person that's emotions change, that my perspectives change. I am someone that wants to see and learn as much as I can and take in as much as I can from my surroundings. And what I really realize is I am best when I am creating. So I am a creator and artist, and right now I live in Burien. I make art. More recently, I've been making printmaking art. I started doing printmaking in 2022, I believe was the exact year, but I've always made art. I started making art since I was a young child. I would craft, I would paint. I come from a creative family, but I also come from a family of immigrants where creativity is something that takes a back seat in your life. So everything is typically around, what do you do to make an income? How do you pick a career based on income or whatnot? So it's taken me a lot of time to really connect with art and make it an active part of my life every day because it brings me purpose, and because I've learned that by doing that, I also bring other people joy in the process. So with that being said, in addition to my printmaking art, I like to bring art to my community. So I have a little art museum in front of my house. It's an idea that I didn't coin myself. There was what they call flags, and they're called free little art galleries. And I came across one on Instagram once, and it's the idea of we've probably all seen those neighborhood little bookstores, or I should say little libraries, but instead of a little library, people, there's some that have art inside of them. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. And I love museums. I love art. I love talking to other artists. So I'm like, what if I had a little museum in front of my own house? And that's exactly what I did. So I started the little art museum, I think it was in 2023. Yes, actually this May is its 2-year anniversary that the little museum came about. I made my husband help me build it. We found this plan on Etsy, and, kind of retro. I wanted it to have a slanted like mono roof. So, and I wanted it to have a clear roof so that it would bring in natural light, especially since it's so gray here 6 months of the year.
Yeah.
So we built the museum. It started off with having themes for the little museum, and I call it the Burien Little Art Museum, the BLAM for short. And what it's ended up being is it acts kind of more of I curate it, so I will do calls for art, and people will send their art. People have sent art from different states, from the East Coast here. I even had my first piece of art come from Australia. That is,
Whoa,
yes.
wow.
Yeah, so it's really cool to just see different forms of art making. And since I'm also an art maker myself and I engage with the community, I'm always letting people know, like, hey, if you've got a little piece of art you want to show, we always welcome it. So now, rather than having specific themes, the little art museum, I just kind of put things up. And after it's been on display for a couple of months, the pieces will go into the free art bin. So right below the museum, there's a little bin. And I try to keep it stocked with pieces so that people could also take home small pieces of art to just kind of not only inspire people to see art on their daily commutes or walks. And it's always really fun to see people stop and look inside, and people of all ages come and look inside, but also bringing pieces of art.
That is so cool. I mean, I think that's so creative and a beautiful way of connecting so many people. And yeah, as you can see, I love museums myself and I know the importance of it. And so I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you're sharing this. And I'm glad that if you don't know anything about this, please, please, please look for her. At the end, we're going to be sharing your website and your social media, and that way people can connect and reach out to you. Um, so but before we do that, we're gonna tap a little bit more into you, and based on what you just shared. And so you say about, I hope it's okay I ask you about, you say that you're Latina.
Mhm.
What does that mean to you?
Being Latina, so giving you a little bit of that background, my parents are both immigrants from Cuba. My parents and my grandparents and my family all came. My parents were both in, early school age kids, and we were raised, or I should say, they raised me. I was born in South Florida, and I was raised in a way that, at the time seemed normal to me. We were only allowed to speak Spanish at home, but then I would go to school and, I actually learned to speak English while I was in school. So then I started to learn more about the different types of cultures and what my culture was and what other cultures around me were. And being Latina, through the years, I realized that while I think I lived in a community that accepted me for who I was, there is a lot of things in my upbringing that made me different. And just as one example, my parents were always very supportive of me and my interests and my creativity. But when I wanted to pursue things like art school or have an art-based career, the question always came up of, does that make money? Or how will you make money? Or like, why don't you an engineer? Why won't you become a doctor? And things like that. And now that I'm older and I have a different perspective and I understand the struggles of being an immigrant, of coming to this country, I realize why they think that way. There was a point in my life where I was like, well, they don't want to accept me for who I am. But now I realize that it comes from a place of going to a country to feel like you have to be successful there and to survive, and then wanting to pass on those survival skills and traits. So with that being said, that's why it's kind of taken me time to say, hey, I can still be an artist. I can still be creative and I can still do all these things. And I think what is really special to me now is that my art has always been about being colorful and things like that. But over the last couple of years, I've been trying to infuse more of my culture into that. And I've learned that a lot of that colorful part of me is because of my culture of being Cuban, raised with Latin music and bright and fun families and things like that that make me special, that do translate in my art in different ways.
So, we've been having some interviews in the past about artists and art and what that means. And again, that question or the answer is completely different depending on who we're talking to. But like, for example, you created your museum, but then you also like having this art print. Do you have any other format of art? I mean, other mediums?
I've dabbled into all sorts of art. So when I went to college, I did my major in communications, but I did do a minor in art. And while I was in college, I really focused on photography and acrylic painting. And my mom also really enjoys painting, so I feel like I always, did some form of painting. Drawing intimidated me, and it wasn't until I would say in the last couple years that I take on a lot more illustrating, and I really enjoy enjoy illustrating. And again, I think some of my hesitations with really owning the parts of art that interest me was always feeling like, well, if I didn't go to actual art school, if I didn't have a formal art training, then I can't be an artist because I'm supposed to have this. And it's from talking to other creators, it's from talking to other artists and learning that there's a lot of people that didn't go to art school. And art school, for me, it just was such a you need this to be this. And like I said, it wasn't until a couple years ago that I finally was like, you know what? I didn't go to formal art school, but that doesn't make me any less of an artist. And I am the artist that I show the world. So, I can only be what I allow myself to be. And I've just allowed myself the space to call myself an artist, to make that art. So yeah, I've dabbled into all forms of art. And more recently, I started doing printmaking, like I mentioned. And I think what really drew me to printmaking is it brings together the process of photography. So, all the steps of thinking of the composition of an image, taking the image, making adjustments, whether it's in, doing the black and white photography in the lab or, making adjustments in things like Photoshop or whatnot, but that whole process into bringing an image to life. But then also the painterly part of acrylic painting, the playing with color theory and how you want to tell a story through colors and techniques and strokes. And printmaking was just the medium that I felt like married the two things. And I've fallen in love with it. I print make probably every day. If you look at my nails, I have what looks like dirt, but it's actually ink all over my hands. And I really enjoy the carving part of it. To me, the carving is meditative and it's very therapeutic. I'm somebody that has anxiety, so I find that carving just gives me that kind of mellowing, kind of meditative state. But then again, the end result and the process of it all brings together my love for color theory and I guess my love for process. I'm a Virgo through and through.
I love the colors you bring. I know this is gonna be hard for the interview, but you have a very colorful, and then your pens also. I mean, I wish people can see you. They're so beautiful and colorful.
Thank you.
And I do believe in there's an artist that was here last year in Kelly Lyles, and she loves color. And we're really talking about the relationship between the personalities of color and how, really you bring joy when you bring the color. I mean, and I'm talking about bright colors because you can also bring like the dark and blacks and grays and browns, but it's really doomy and kind of it's beautiful. There's a beautiful colors, but it doesn't bring that lifefulness, that joyfulness, the bubble energy on some of the elements. I do believe in color being as a tool to lift our spirits and to regulate our emotions too. Yeah, there are times where we overstimulated. Yeah, we need something calmer and lighter and something to be in the mindfulness, the mindset to say, okay, now it's to come. Going back to you and to the art that you do and in the museum. So you're saying that you curate the what the art that you present, and how often are you curating that?
So when I started the museum, I was curating it by quarters, by season. So one of my favorite ones was like an October one that we did, and I did like a spooky theme, and it was so cool, like the different pieces of art that we got for that one. Some were themed around, like scary movie characters. Other were just more like fall related. I've done like winter, but what happened, being frank, is that it was hard to get enough people to participate with specific themes. So, I would post about the different themes and I would let people know about the themes, but it was just hard to curate a specific themes at all times. So the one theme that I kind of try to still do is a holiday theme, just because it's important to me to try to bring some color to the museum, especially like in our gray months. So I try to make sure I have a theme and a lot of art in that time of the year. But when there isn't a theme, I just, I'm always letting people know that there's a little museum. If you have a small piece of art that you'd like shown, I don't have to keep the art. Sometimes people are like, hey, I want to show a piece of art, but, I want it back. Totally fine. Once you're ready to have it back, you can have the piece back. Or if, a lot of artists or a lot of creators and makers, they just make a lot of stuff. And sometimes we just have stuff that we're like, what do I do with it? Well, you can give it a new home by putting it in the little museum, letting the world see it. And then afterwards, if you don't want it back, it goes in the free bin and hopefully it goes to someone's home and makes art accessible to all. And that was another big part of why I wanted to create the little museum, is I wanted art to be accessible to everybody. I think some of us are lucky to be exposed to the arts, to be cultured, to seek that. But some people, they honestly don't know what they're missing out on. It's just, if it hasn't been a part of their life, they don't know what they're missing out on. And I'm like, if someone could be going on their walk, and especially, again, here where it could be very gray, sometimes you're just looking for a small piece of joy in your day. And I hope that the museum, having something colorful to look at, something interesting that maybe you're not seeing in your day to day, to peek into the window of the museum and find a little bit of inspiration in the day.
I love how the work that you're doing is about reaching out people, about accessibility, about being able to welcome and bring something cool in everyday's life. So I really, really appreciate that. And um, for some of you that don't know what the curatorial process is or that technical term, you'll hear a lot of the language out there. There's, oh, are we curating playlist? Are we curating a menu? Well, I'm gonna be the cranky person here right now. That word comes from the museum field. It doesn't come from any other. And then from that's when you start to see in all different fields. But curator of exhibitions, curator of education, curator of art collections. And so when it's a curatorial process is where you plan, you look at the process of an exhibit design, and then from there, it's many different ways that you can do that work. But that's what I mean. So for any of you who like, what is that term? What is that word curatorial or curating? Or it's just selecting and looking and planning as to how it's going to be that exhibit or that work being played in whatever format that is. So yeah.
And I will say that the little museum, while it's small, it's about 18 inches by 12 inches. Curating work is hard work. And even in my little tiny space, I've always admired and loved museums, but I've never worked in a museum. And just curating that small space taught me that it's a lot of work to not only find the right story to tell, but bringing the right pieces, making sure you have the space for them, hanging them up. The little museum isn't very fancy. We use thumbtacks, we use nails, we use double-sided tape and small easels. But even with that, there's times where I've used museum wax, and in the summer it melts off, and just trying to find that. So all to say that, and even in a tiny space, I learned a lot about the hard work that goes into bringing an exhibit to life.
If you want to learn more, we can do that behind the scenes. It's like, oh, there's a lot of it. I used to teach on a UW exhibit design for a couple of years, and yeah, it's a lot more technical, but we are not here for the technicality. We are here being authentic ourselves, and even this museum, I know what the standards are to present things, but when you're limited in resources, you're limited in hand or time or space, you do what you can do, and then just the idea of presenting it to the public shows so you can see it. I think that's the prize right there, is to make it accessible. And that's what I like about the project that you're doing, is that when you're using that term, is you inviting, you welcoming, you are letting people, she's like, come on, come and see it. And so we still got plenty of time, but before we forget, tell me again your website or how people can reach you.
So my website is my Pigmented Press is my website, and through Pigmented Press, you can learn about my artwork. And I do pop-up events. One of the things that I do as an artist is I do mini print vending machines. You'll notice a theme here. I like small. So I have mini print vending machines, and inside of the mini print vending machine that I have right now, her name is Daisy. She's a pink one, and it's the one that I take to a lot of pop-up events. I do mini lino cut prints. So I brought some I couldn't bring the big machine in here, but this gives you an idea, an example of the little print. So all of these little prints are, I've designed, I've hand carved, I hand ink, and then once you bend from the machine, it is the idea of a mystery, blind box idea where you put a token in, you don't know which one you're going to get, but you will get a little 2.5 by 3.5 original piece of art to take home. And again, in the spirit of making art accessible, it allows people to own a small piece of original art that you can hang on your refrigerator, put on your desk, or give to a friend if you'd like. I also have another little mini machine that's coming out that I'm excited to talk more about. But yes, you can find my art on pigmentedpress.com, and there's also a tab there for the museum. So if anyone is interested in the museum, you can go to my website and you can contact me to have your piece shown at the museum. Also, I am on Instagram as Pigmented Press, and then the museum has its own Instagram page, which is just Burien Art Sorry, Burien Little Art Museum.
Nice, nice. And it's good that you mentioned art museum because then on the umbrella of museums, there's a lot of type of museums too. And so art, what is art to you?
Art to me is what keeps me alive. Art to
That is
me,
a wonderful answer.
yeah. Art to me is how I connect with others, how I connect with myself, how I find joy. Art to me is also, I mean, I think I've looked at different pieces of art and gotten so many different things from them. There's times that a piece provokes me to think further. And there's times that art similar to mine just makes me smile, just brings joy to me. I don't always understand the art that I'm looking at. I don't always even love the art that I look at, but it always compels me to think further.
I love the freedom of it. You know, I love that at the end of the day, it's not about defining it, but it's about living it and feeling it and just expressing it. And I love that element of um I'm not into technical stuff much. No, I'm not. I'm more into really being meaningful and really connecting with it, and that's beyond the terms that you can apply to it. And so no, I'm excited about you and the work that you do, and I hope that you guys are also excited about what she's doing. And so do you have any like any so in the beginning you said that you were curating for no, every quarter, now you're doing holidays. Are you planning to extend the museum, or are you gonna keep it like that, but it just keep changing? And if you're changing it, how often?
So I do change the museum. The pieces I try to, as people send me pieces, there's usually about 7 to 9 pieces of art in the museum. There are 2 pieces that always stay inside of the museum. One of them is the sea dragon. So if you've, been around Seattle and actually around the whole West Coast, there are sea dragons, and you usually see them hanging on like light posts and their artist makes them. They're usually made out of upcycled wood and paint and CDs. So this artist made a miniature sea dragon for the Little Art Museum. It's the smallest one the artist has ever made, so it's really exciting that it lives inside of the museum, and it's also why the museum's locked so that it stays there. There's also a mini piece by an artist that's a friend of mine, and she's a very good friend and a big inspiration to me, another whimsical artist. Her name is Dora Frost. So her piece is part of what I call the permanent collection. And then there's 2 like topiaries that were made by someone in the neighborhood who does like miniature furniture. So the topiaries and the bench, which are both works of art, all those pieces are always in the museum. And then the other pieces change. I mean, if someone's interested in showing a piece, you just have to reach out. Like I said, you could go to the BLAM or Burien Little Art Museum Instagram and just send me a message. My motto is as if it fits, it can be in the museum. Of course, it is a neighborhood museum, so I just try to keep the art appropriate to all viewers of all ages. But yeah, I just try to, if a piece has been up for a month or 2, then a new piece comes and I just kind of replace it and either return it to the artist or put it in the free art bin. There's something called Game of Shrooms that takes place, I think it's the second week of June, and it's like a mushroom themed art hunt that takes place all over the world, actually. So I always participate in that. So for June, I do bring a lot of mushrooms into the museum, and I do participate in Game of Shrooms where I'll hang a certain amount of original pieces of art that I make. And as people are scavenging, that's one of the stops on the hunt. So if you look up Game of Shrooms, I'll be participating again this year. And if you're participating, you can stop by the museum and get a piece. And then, like I mentioned, as someone that likes spooky season, I try to do something spooky for Halloween around that time of year, and then something from the holidays, not necessarily specifically holiday themed, but just always trying to keep it bright and colorful. Another thing to mention is that my husband is an electrician who built the museum and gracefully put electricity in it.
Nice.
So it stays lit up till about 9:30 at night. And again, since it gets dark in the winter here and people are still doing their walks, they can still see inside the museum. It's well lit so that you can see the museum at night.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah,
Isn't
it's
that
a
cool
lot of
that,
fun.
yeah, there's this concept of a museum, or what is that? And it's something that, you know, many years ago I attended to this session from a Smithsonian actually, and they're talking about what's community. And I thought, well, I know the answer was community. God, it got so complicated. Define that term. Who is your community? You know, is your friends and people who support the museum, or is your neighborhood, or is your city? If it's a city, are you really tapping every single demographic and group and all the different diversity elements that we are bringing to the table. What I mean by that is that, it's our gender, sexual orientation, disabilities, and so on. And so it is cool that regardless of how different we are, we also share the common ground of enjoying art and enjoying things. And it is just, museums and communities, it's always that word tied into it. What is a community? What is a museum? But I think that the older I get, the more simple I want to keep it. And it's a place where you share a meal. It could be physically a meal or a place where you share the joy of a color, the joy of the art, the joy of a person. Because also is the engagement of the artist and who is the artist, and also learning more about the artist. And I don't know. I think that it's a very beautiful project what you're working on. And
Thank you.
regardless of the size, it could be small, it could be big, and the end of the day is still the same kind of message about passing that on to everyone around, and then just have fun with it. Do you have fun with this?
Oh, I really enjoy the museum. It's been a really fun project to work on. It's allowed me, like to your point, to connect with other people in my direct community. As people walk by, I've had people like, "What is this?" And I explain to them what it is. I've had little notes left inside of the free box. They're like, "Thank you," or things like that, which is really nice to see that I don't know who they are, but clearly they appreciate it enough to come back and leave a note saying that they enjoyed their visit to the museum. So yeah, I really enjoy it, and I enjoy getting to meet and connect with other people. And when I want to work with bigger pieces, I'm also part of Burien Arts, and myself and another board member named Ambar, we curate the Burien Community Center art walls, and that's something that we started doing last fall. Our goal there is to really create a space for emerging artists, people who have never shown art, and also trying to find opportunities to bring some learnings to individuals, just ways to hang your art, how to get your art seen, how to get your art out there. Again, really much under the premise of you can start making art and showing art at any age, regardless of your background. It's just more about the commitment to the art, to your vision, and wanting others to see it. So that's really the goal with the community center space, is to allow people who have an interest in showing and allowing marginalized groups an opportunity to show. Right now, we have an artist who will have a reception this week for, but this is an artist that started making art late in life to help with their mental health, which is really special to be able to share stories. And also, as you mentioned earlier, is creating a space for those artists to share their stories, why they make art. So yeah, I again love making art, love bringing it to the community, whether it's the little museum or in the Burien Community Center or within my own individual artwork.
Yeah, this I do believe that art is a reflection of where we are and who we are as a human beings. And what I mean by that is that you express an emotion, whatever that is, and through the emotion is also being represented in colors and shapes and mediums and formats. And no, I think that the Burien community, the Highline community is so rich with so many talented people and so many different undiscovered treasures. We do have a lot of treasures in this area, and I'm glad that there's many different ways to shine the different jewels that we got in the community in many different formats. So no, this has been a wonderful opportunity to get to know you a little bit more. Would you like to share something else either about you or what's coming up about you or the project? Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'd love to share a little bit more about my printmaking project that I'm working on. So, as you know, I have a mini vending machine, but there's another one that I'm launching pretty soon. It's called the Art Bodeguita. And the Bodeguita is inspired on, I gotta be honest, Bad Bunny's new album. It's called De Voy a Tirar Más Fotos. And, it's a lot big reflection on his roots. And it made me take a moment and step back and think a lot about my roots as well. And this little art bodeguita it's a miniature New York City bodega. I am not from New York City. I spent some time. I lived there for about 2 years, but my mom's side of the family family after coming from Cuba to the United States. That's where they ended up initially, which is in New York. And a lot of my childhood was filled with hearing stories about, life in New York, La Bodega, up the street, the different experiences or whatnot. So this little bodega has many illustrations that I've made of bodega items, a lot of them with, Latin cues to them and whatnot. But when you vend, you'll get something. It might be fabuloso, it might be coffee, different things like that. And then I'm also working on fine art prints that I'm designing related to my culture and upbringing. And those prints have a combination of that more urban part of my mom's upbringing when she came to this country, living in New York and whatnot. And then my dad's, which was very different. He lived in a small farming community, and they did a lot more things related to farm work and whatnot. So I'm kind of bringing together a lot of the stories that kind of made me who I am from my relatives and my roots, and bringing those together with both the experience of the bodega as well as the fine art pieces within the collection that I'm still figuring out the name for, but I think it'll come.
I love it. I love how you are bringing your heritage. Excuse me. Sorry for that.
It's okay.
So the concept of heritage, that as you see, the name of the museum is the Highline Heritage Museum. And so that is one of the biggest elements of what we do here, is to make sure that we're bringing our heritage or roots of what makes us as us, and then sharing it to everyone around us. And so it's not beautiful when you're able to share something that makes you, and distinctly this unique light regardless. And that's something that I hope that people get inspired. I hope that people come and come and see the museum and comes to learn and maybe get inspired by getting more ideas or even participating in your galleries. I like that they can also, hopefully it could be something that you can play with too. The art and heritage combined. It's like inviting for people to like, hey, what is your heritage? And then just sharing it through art. I love that you're already doing it in a way with you. Yeah, this community is demographically so rich too and very diverse, and it's just be able to share what everyone. I don't know. That's what I like about this place too. It's just all about finding ways to share those things. So we got only 3 more minutes, 4 more minutes. Anything else would you like to share before we end the meeting?
Well, one thing on the same note of heritage, I think we're in such a critical time too of talking about heritage. And I think that the reality of it is there's a lot of hate in the world right now, and a lot of that is becoming more visible and more unfiltered. And I would like to think that if we just take that moment, as you said earlier, to listen to one another, to really just step into someone else's shoes with the empathetic mindset, it goes a long way. So I think that's another kind of part of that heritage in wanting to share that, is because one, I feel privileged that I have an opportunity to share my heritage, but two, I hope that by doing that, it's just a little pebble in the world of showing that it's okay for us to all be different. Us being different, us coming from different walks of life. Immigration is a beautiful thing. I have a friend who has a installation right now here in Burien around that, and that's kind of part of that inspiration as well, of just really celebrating all the things that we bring to this world, to this culture. And yeah, I hope that it brings a little bit of joy within that.
I think that the concept of what makes you, it is, you are not a mold. You are not born to fit into a box. Our roles is to be ourselves.
Yep.
And how unique and how beautiful and how different we are. And regardless if it's the color of the skin, if it's a gender, or it's your age or whatever, I think that at the end of the day is not about fitting into molds that are painful. That is not you, but it's more about honoring and celebrating how beautiful and unique you are as a human being and the good things that we bring to the table. Yes, we got a lot of common ground. We got a lot of things that makes us, I do believe that we have actually more similarities than differences. And when I say that is we do want the same thing, a healthy community, to be loved, to be that we belong to something, to that our voices matters. We want to give back to the community. And so there's a lot of areas where we align, but then to hide the light, to shine away from what makes you, I think that's a very horrible and painful experience to anyone. Like a little kid pretending to be an immigrant kid pretending to be white just to be accepted is a very painful journey. And then so instead, like, no, just be you, be proud of who you are, and then bring the best version of you. It's like, hey, let's do something together. Let's give back to the community. Let's be inspired by others. So
And
anyway.
celebrate one another.
Oh, absolutely.
As you said, we're all individuals, and I think we should all celebrate one another.
Absolutely. This one of the statements that we got here is just celebrating our similarities, but then also honoring our differences. And so it's so crucial. And more than anything, I think even if you don't celebrate, let's just say you don't even want to honor it, you still need to respect and go back to the definition of what is respect. You don't have to like something. You don't have to destroy things. You just have to respect that we are different and that you have your own rightful lane to follow and the same as others. And it's just respecting that we're different. We don't have to attack. Honestly, I don't believe that sense of and even though I've researched for more than 20 years, the roots of prejudice and racism, and I can talk a lot about more of a technical component of what that is. But at the end of the day, is, just be, let be. But just let people be and be yourself and celebrate that uniqueness. I'm already taking a lot of your interview. This is about you, and I'm talking too much. And so no, this is about you. Well, thank you so much for this.
Thank you for letting me be here. I really appreciate it. And if anybody wants to stay in touch, as I mentioned, you can find my art on my website and on Instagram as Pigmented Press. You can also find a link on my website for the Burien Little Art Museum, and you can also find the Little Art Museum on Instagram under Burien Little Art Museum. Thank you so much, Nancy. I appreciate this.
No, thank you for coming in here. And then yeah, remember, if you have questions and if you're watching the video, you can go back to the video and stop to see all the art that we just showed you earlier today. So once again, thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Our Highline Voices, 106.5 KQWZ LP FM. We envision ourselves sitting at a round table where no one is the leader and stories are heard respectfully, regardless of gender, age, sexual orientation, disabilities, or ethnicity. Our mission is we collect, preserve, and tell the stories of the Highline region and its people. We want to extend our mission outside the walls of the museum. Our Highline Voices represents us all, honoring our past, celebrating our present, and uniting to cultivate our future. This project allows us to reach out to demographics who might be unable to visit the museum. People with disabilities, low-income families, people who don't trust museums, and more. In partnership, we are launching a locally programmed new radio station at the museum, featuring recorded and live Highline's heritage, history, culture, arts, and more. Are you interested in sharing your story? Email director@highlinemuseum.org.